JREAM, Jiu-Jitsu Rules Everything Around Me podcast.
Hi guys, welcome to the JREAM podcast. Today we have Drew. I'd like him to introduce himself because he's a man of many hats. Drew, tell us what you do.
Yeah, nice to be here, Malachi. My name's Drew Weatherhead. I run Because Jitsu. It's a meme page on Instagram, Facebook, as well as, if you're watching the video, you can tell I'm at my gym right now. I'm a gym owner up in Canada, black belt in jiu-jitsu, and that's pretty much what takes up most of my time, everything to do with those two things, making memes as well as jiu-jitsu. So I've started to get into doing tutorials as well, like Malachi does. And it's a big world for jiu-jitsu out there, but kind of a weird one right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most distanced we've been from each other, but at the same time, the most available we've been to reach out to one another. So my first question would be the memes. How do you make a meme, and how do you make it before everybody else? And are you really that funny?
I feel like I'm funnier in the memes than I am in person, but I don't know. Maybe we'll discover that during this podcast. The memes, I mean, it's really pretty simple to make them as far as making them is concerned, but what I do mostly is just sort of watch trends, see what other people are doing, pick up on common themes, and sort of give my take and put a jiu-jitsu spin on them. But yeah, it is kind of its own art. Like I feel like it's super simple to do, but I guess it's just because it comes natural, because a lot of people say it's not.
It's not. I mean, I've thought of something that would be a funny meme, and I've sent it to my daughter, but I was like, no, this is not funny. And if I think I like to think of myself as not liking a lot of stuff. I don't find many things funny, especially a lot of comedians or like shows or stuff like that. But I think when I think something's clever, I'm like, I have to give like a tip of my hat and be like, all right, that's clever. And I do that a lot on your page, which is like, I don't understand how you get in front of everybody else, how you have that thought, and then immediately you find the right meme or the right picture to use that joke on.
Yeah, I tend to find the picture first and then figure out how it will work after that. Like I don't go looking for a picture when I have an idea. I look for a picture and then I get an idea.
I mean, and you have built how big an audience?
On Instagram, we're just about to crack 140,000. That's where the most of them are. On Facebook, we got I think 45,000.
And that, I mean, for me being somebody who's organic and has really tried my best to get followers, 140,000 is a lot of people. I mean, especially organically.
Yeah, it is a lot, and I think it has a lot to do with the generality of it. Even though the jokes are niche in that they're all about jiu-jitsu or MMA, they generally apply or are acceptable to most people within that community. Whereas things that are a lot more specific to a team or to a style, to nogi, to gi, is going to start breaking down your audience into the smaller cells.
And that's interesting you say that, is that you have jiu-jitsu, and then you have jokes about heel hooks, you have jokes about white belts. There's so much to cover. Do you have are you almost like a comedian, or almost like somebody that walks around with a notepad and says, that's a funny joke, I should make sure I remember, because I can't remember half the things I think of.
Yeah, that definitely happens. That's not the majority of them, but that does happen every now and again. If I don't write it down, it vaporizes like mist in the wind.
Yeah, what was that? I was going to change the world with that one.
Yeah, it's happened before, and I'm sure I could kick myself 1,000 times for the ones I've forgotten.
And so now you've kind of thrown your hat, which I really enjoy. I knew when you were brown, and I didn't get to see too much of your training. And then kind of you started sharing more of your jiu-jitsu, and it's really good. I mean, I appreciate that. And that triangle that you hit off the omoplata, that was slick. I don't reshare stuff. I like to just share my stuff and try to be like, if you want to go to somebody else's page, it's over here, you know. But there's very few times where I'm moved to share something because of the sheer either the ingenuity or just the skill to get that, to show that. And like my recognition, I'm like, man, that's really dope. I really wanted everybody else I know to see this.
Well, I appreciate that. That's pretty high praise coming from you. My style has always been, and it's not always been to my benefit, it's been to my detriment in the past too, has been very flowy in that I tend to just move with the energy. I'm not a very strong guy. I'm long and I'm kind of wormy. I can move around and bend, but it's...
I used to be able to do that.
Yeah, a couple back surgeries later, right?
Yeah.
But it's sort of formed my style in a way that I can sort of Bruce Lee my way around people in that I move like water over the rock, you know? So it looks very nice. It looks really good when it's working. If somebody can hold me in place though, kill my mobility, then I'm dead in the water. And so I had to start fixing that part of my game at brown belt. It took me all the way, like probably 10 years to figure out like, oh yeah, I'm great while I'm moving, but if I can't move, I'm not great.
That you have a very similar story that I have. When I started MMA, I basically was going to be a striker, at least in my mind. I'm like, okay, I like to punch. I like to get punched. These are the things I'm going to do. And then I went to Oregon and everybody took me down. Everybody took me down, and they didn't show you anything. They just beat you up while you were down there. And so I basically would stare. I don't know if you remember subfighter.com. All right, so that was before it was on YouTube, so you couldn't get anything worth a dang unless it was Subfighter. And I remember studying Subfighter. I remember looking at the stuff on there and just learning jiu-jitsu from there, and then taking notes off UFC fights, basically.
Wow!
And I had a very good scramble game. So if you want to go live and go fast with me, I can submit you. So when I got to Top Team, I was like, I thought I was pretty good, and there was guys that I could go against that were elite ADCC or world level, and it's almost like they took it as an insult that you were going so hard with them and fast that they would match it, so I could survive in that area. The people that killed me were the guys that would go inch by inch by inch.
Yeah, those Bernardo types, eh? They just crush you 1 inch at a time.
And so I would get my guard back, and then as soon as I got my guard back, I would get my guard passed again. And then that would be 1 5-minute round. And then the next round, they're now going to mount, and I'm having to get back out of mount each time. And it was just something that I was just like, I didn't understand what it was. And in my theory, as soon as I had the neck surgery, and I couldn't really fight anymore, it was that I was learning actual jiu-jitsu with the gi to slow down.
Yeah, I agree. So often it comes down to having to get injured before you have to figure out what's wrong, right? Because that's kind of the whole impetus to jiu-jitsu as an idea, is that it's supposed to work for people it's not supposed to work for. So for instance, for smaller and less strong people to work against larger, more strong people, that's a disadvantage. It shouldn't, like, physics should not allow that. But we use these simple little mechanical tricks to make it work. And I guess when people are injured is another way that they're going to have to find those mechanical tricks to make it work. Because otherwise, I mean, they're at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so jealous of the guys that never had to change their game. It's like, not even just the throw, but I don't think Andre Galval has changed too much. He's just been Andre Galval, just at bigger weights, continuing bigger weights.
You could say the same with Marcelo, same with Hodger. Like, it's not a bad thing to not have to change your game.
Yeah, and so they've curated this entire personality of who they are in their jiu-jitsu, and you know what they're going to do. You just can't stop it. And then you see, when I'm talking about myself, it's like, okay, I don't have hooks. What am I going to do? It's like, okay, you're going to play spider. And it just kind of moves into these different traits where I would have never really looked at my stuff. And I think that's what the injury does, is you don't get that. Like when you go out and train, you're like, man, that was a good training session. And you don't look at every ugly thing you did. You just look at the good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I'm terrible for that.
Yeah, and it's terrible because when you get that release and you submitted everybody in the room, and maybe you made 3 or 4 errors, and they still paid off, but they were errors in your choice. Like you decided to do something and you had to like change that objective and go somewhere in another complete direction.
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial for people who can do that for themselves, to not focus on the good and to actually like objectively focus on where they're weak. But it's so rare that I think the best way for that to happen is to have a good coach who can see it for you. And that's, I think, where the superstars come through, are the ones that can do it for themselves and have a good coach who can help guide them.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, is it's very hard for me to tell people what they do good at. There's a lot of times I say, oh man, that was great. That was when you didn't just meet my expectation. You went past my expectation. And they don't understand that it's like, if you did something correctly, you were supposed to do that anyways. I'm not going to give you a thumbs up and high five for that, unless you've never done it before. Then I'm like, yeah, good job. With the guys that are passing with a knee slide pass the correct way, I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to tell them when they don't grab the head or if they don't rewind their hips. I'm like, listen, you got to rewind those hips next time. I saw the pass. The pass was good. You're supposed to pass that way. But you're supposed to also do this, this, and this, and you didn't do either.
Yeah, I'm really interested in getting into your coaching methodology, because I see a lot of posts that you put up at competitions where you're there for 8-10 hours coaching all of your team and losing your voice and putting like your blood and sweat into building this team out. And I've just recently, I've only been doing my own academy for a little less than 2 years. I guess it'll be 2 years here next month. But I mean, we're just getting to the point where we have a respectable competition team at white and kind of at blue belt. So I'm getting into learning how to coach to get my guys to win, learning how to coach to get their opponents to double guess and to play with the ref a little bit. I'm curious to hear some of your strategies that work.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely get into some stuff. You're going against a couple people in that match. You're going against yourself, because what you say, you have to watch out what you say, because people will shut that down as soon as they hear it. If they hear you basically coaching one direct thing, if they're a good enough player, they make an adjustment. Another thing that kind of crashes is that after white and blue, once they get that purple belt, a lot of people stop competing. It's like that. Oh, yeah. It's like that white and blue. They're hungry, and then as soon as they get the purple, they start to think their jiu-jitsu is something special, and if they lose, it makes it less special. At least that's what I see often, is that, especially brown belts. I mean, unless you're like curating a brown belt champion, and the guy does not care about winning or losing, they only care about competing. And that's what makes champions. If you look at, I like to look at, I have two friends in Florida called the Hetzer brothers, Brian and Kevin, and they've been chipping away at the black belt. They've beaten Michael Liera, they've beaten some really high level names, and I think against Levi Jones, he lost by an advantage. And at the highest level, that's just that piece. If you would have beat him, maybe he would have went on. It's like you never know what's going to happen, because that one person can shut you down with an advantage or a ref decision, and you could have went on to win the whole thing.
That's right. It's the margins are so much tighter. I think you're right. At white and blue belt, it's much easier to win any given match, and at purple and up, it's much easier to lose. Yeah,
it's that small one-time thing, and I think I put a big, tremendous point on my competitors that I'm a pit, it's like a pit crew. If they don't understand the language that I'm speaking, and they haven't been in the gym enough, and because I call things that shouldn't be called things. It's basically the words that I've made up in my gym. And it's not like I'm recoining jiu-jitsu, or it's just what I call it. I don't want to look it up. So they know that I've named things like Marcelo, or I've named things like Bernardo, or just good competitors. One thing I do for MMA, which is like the Anderson, and that's a front kick to the face. But I had to change that. I had to change that because other guy, I would say Anderson, and then the other guy would throw it. I'm like, oh, man, that's too easy.
Yeah, you got to go the Eddie Bravo route and do something so bizarre that nobody knows except his crew.
Yeah, man. I've gotta buy his DVD. I'm really like, I don't do a lot of no gi, but I do a lot of MMA, and of course, man, he's gonna be putting out guys like Danaher's guys. I bet you Gordon Ryan might fight MMA. There's that chance that there's just not going to be enough money in the game to not go into that direction. Where like you see Eddie Bravo's guys are already pretty much competing MMA. Like you got the Martinez brothers.
Yeah, they had their run. I mean, he's got a number of guys that are at elite level in the UFC that if he's not their only coach, he's their jiu-jitsu coach, like Tony Ferguson. Who's the guy that knocked out Bisping? God, I can't think of his name right now.
Not Rockhold.
No, a Mexican fellow. Anyways. I can't remember. Anyways, he's got a small staple of people that are elite in UFC. So, I mean, he's been in the game long enough that he's found those athletes along the way that were going to be there anyways, but sort of started to take his style into it. So, like you see the Nogi Darce style quite a lot in his gym starting to play out through Ferguson. And I think you'll see some other things through some of his other guys coming up. But to speak to your point about Gordon, I could totally see him going into MMA. We know that he was starting to train it at a certain point. We saw some videos coming out, and he was pretty honest online saying that he's not there yet. Like, his striking is garbage. He wouldn't trust himself not to just get knocked the fuck out by some no-name. But that's good on him. He's going to get himself to that level. And look, he's training under John Danaher, who was the guy who helped groom George St. Pierre. Like, they're not going to give him some fight that he's going to lose. They've done a great job with Gary and bringing him up through the 1FC ranks. Like, they're picking fights that he can win, fights he can look good in, fights where he's not going to take a ton of damage. That's kind of how you got to build a guy.
You know what? And to that fact, when Kron Gracie was in Japan and Gary was in the Japanese area, the Asia area, you guys, man, I don't know why they never put that fight together. That would have been my dream fight because of their match in the at the ADCC.
Yeah.
And now it's like we can't get Ryan Hall to fight anybody that's a jiu-jitsu guy. It's like we want Pride back, because Pride would be like, oh, you like wrestler versus wrestler? Let's do it. You like jiu-jitsu guy versus jiu-jitsu guy? Let's do it,
Yeah, I feel you. That's the fan fight for sure. But I don't think that Kron will ever succumb to that unless they force it on him, unless just the stars align. He has no way to say no, because he's got nothing to win. He's got everything to lose from that match. He had a blockbuster match with Gary where he just about got submitted, managed to get out of a deep rear naked choke, and then put him in a choke before the end of the round. Like, that's a picture perfect way to finish that fight. He doesn't want anything less than that is going to be worse. In his position, why would he ever take that fight? He's on top. Yeah,
and that goes to an extent that where, I guess it comes out of Dana and company and what value they see in him, because you see what they do. They kind of sell their stock in a guy that once they start putting a guy out to pasture, and sometimes those guys hit home runs. Like I felt like Bisping was going out to pasture, and then he knocks out Rockhold. It has like a whole second life.
That's right. That was kind of the whole career. His career rested on that, him becoming champion after how many years? 10 years in the industry?
And who's to say, like, Rockhold's lost a lot of fights since then, and who's to say that Rockhold wasn't just losing, the pace? You kind of like this. I feel like the same way with Jose Aldo is that Jose Aldo got beat by Conor McGregor, but what Jose Aldo did we see? Because Jose Aldo's never been the same since the McGregor fight. Sure.
Well, it's a chicken and egg question, right? Did that fight take a piece of him away, or was a piece of him going, and that's why he lost the fight? You never know. It could be one or the other, but it's probably one of those things.
And now you have guys like Ryan Hall that they're saying they can't get anybody to agree to fight them, but it seems like the UFC would have all the pull in that matter. Where they can force a fight amongst somebody.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they have, last I checked, and it could be bigger by now, I thought they had over 500 people in their stable on contract. Like, if I was one of those 500 people, how many chances per year within my weight class do I get a chance to fight? You kind of got to take what you can get.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And now we're looking at him taking the Imanari role, him taking the heel hook game, the 50-50 game. He's always been very good at, and taking it to MMA, the same, somewhat similar to how Gary is as well.
Yeah.
And you're seeing, are we going to start seeing more intelligent grapplers having to learn? Because back in the day, like I could be on my back in MMA. Now you can't be on your back in MMA because everybody's been tested and pretty much gone through the whole arm bar triangle defense, and they know how to weather those. What point do we learn heel hooks at a level that can we just negate it?
That's a really good question. I guess the question would be which gyms are going to do it first, because a lot of MMA gyms, the ones you would think of, the ATTs and the AKAs and those big MMA stables, they might not have that leg specialist. So they may have to bring in a guy and bring their team up to speed. And in that process, the team that's already taken over starts taking over, you know?
And that's funny when you say that they don't have that specialist, where when Jay-Z Cavalcante was fighting Shinya Aoki, he was pretty much matched up with him. We brought in Eddie Bravo, and Eddie Bravo he pretty much taught how to stop the rubber guard, at least riding the legs up higher, and I'm not going to say that I can stop the rubber guard, but it still works against guys that are not Eddie Bravo black belts or even from the stable of Eddie Bravo, because I play in the gi a lot, and I don't train as much with my injuries, but it still works today, where it's like, and tell me if I'm wrong, where just kind of cramming yourself back inside the hole is pretty much one of the ways of stopping rubber guard.
Yeah, for sure. You could say that with any high guard too, as long as you can stay square and stay low and kill their arms and kill their hips. Yeah, it's going to make it really difficult for them to play any form of high guard. And then you kind of pick your time to either back out, or they open up, or you explode, or there's ways to stall and negate it. And I mean, even better if you can punch them in the face at the same time, right?
And so we got to look at it that this is going to. So if it's happening all across the world with heel hooks, right? We're going to see it in MMA. We're going to see where guys are going to just get leg after leg after leg, and it's like, man, you're going to have to learn leg locks.
Yeah. This is cool to think about too, because back when I used to really follow UFC and MMA, it's just there's so much of it now to keep up. I
can't either.
I know, but back when I was like balls deep in this shit and I loved it and kept up with every fight, it was Husamal Palhares. That was the guy everybody knew. If you're going to go against him, you're going to be fighting the heel hook the whole time, and he won that battle most of the time. Right. In fact, the ones you remember are the ones where he couldn't get it, which are rare. So if one person could be that guy back then, what if we get a dozen of them? What if a dozen Husamars come into the UFC, like Ryan Hall, like Gary Tonin, like people that have this next level leg game? Yeah, man, they could cause a ruckus.
Yeah, and that would be like, just imagine. I mean, I assume that there's some guys out there that have a good defensive game, but man, most UFC fighters are not fantastic jiu-jitsu players.
That's right.
You get them if you roll with them, you're going to likely submit them in a regular jiu-jitsu match. It just changes when they can hit you and when they can use all their, I'm no longer an athlete. I will say that 100%. I'm done. But man, when submitting one of these younger wrestler kids is super hard, because they get really good at stopping submissions, and they wear you out because they're physical specimens. And then on top of that, you're getting hit. So it kind of makes a whole new playground for grapplers again, where it's like, nobody knows this stuff. Get in while you can. You can get to the top fast, like the hard sell,
Yeah, I guess if we were to think about the leg game coming in, that is that like the Danaher level leg game, the Craig Jones level leg game, plug that into an MMA guy. For the person on defense, they've got to figure out, where am I safe? Because that's what's the confusing thing is with these leg locks. There's so many different kinds of entanglements where one leads to the next, and they can switch this angle, and now you're in a different situation. Like, man,
half guard.
Man,
just half guard. It's no longer safe.
no, for sure. Actually, my MMA coach back in the day, Jason McDonald, when I was training with him, he used half guard top as a finishing position. He's like, if I can get to half guard top, I'll kill you. You
Right.
can't stop me from there. I'm gonna club your brains in, you know.
Right.
So I knew right when I was starting MMA, like I don't want to be on half guard bottom. I gotta get out of that situation. And he just batter you there.
Right.
But what I was saying was with the leg locks, if they can't find somewhere safe, because like you're saying, defense is the easiest thing to learn first when you're trying to learn a new system, is how to stop it, not how to do
Right.
it. If they can't find that safe place, which I think is more complicated than rubber guard, finding a safe place in the high level leg entanglements, then there's going to be a lot of casualties along the way. Like I was rolling with a guy down in Alabama here recently when I was down with Brandon McCaffrin about a month ago, by the name of Quentin Rosenzweig. Have you met this guy?
I have seen that he has DVDs about leg locks.
I have never been leg locked so much in my fucking life when I rolled with this guy. It was humiliating. This was the day before I was supposed to teach a seminar at this school, and I was getting like some fun casual afternoon rolls. I got ate alive. I've rolled with world champions that didn't humiliate me that fast. Like it must have been like 10 minutes of rolling and 40 taps. And I knew it was coming the whole time. I couldn't find a position he couldn't leg lock me in. Like I'm like, okay, from the mount, no, leg locks me from mount. Okay, from full guard, no, he leg locks me from my full guard. I'm like, you fucking kidding me? I can't stop this guy. There's guys like that you're gonna like. Look, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I know what the fuck is going on, and I couldn't stop it. So you get these guys that are athletic blue belts in the UFC, athletic purple belts. They don't have a goddamn chance if they get a guy like that on their legs.
And what a video I did not too long ago where we were talking about I was talking about coaching. Mm-hmm. John Danaher was one of the first people I knew about because he had a book with Hinzo and Hoyler Gracie.
Right.
I think Theory and Practice. Maybe it was some Technique and Theory. Mm-hmm. And that was 2001. And I think he got his black belt at 2002. And I tell this to everybody, I'm like, do you think that there's not a stable of guys that were created before you have Gary Tunnan, before you have Gordon Ryan, Nicky Ryan, or Craig Joe? There was a whole group of guys that had to make those guys better, mm-hmm. right? And they may have just not been the right, like you say, you don't know who's going to walk into the gym at what time and what time's going to bring guys up. Same thing with Eddie Bravo. I remember him starting 10th Planet, and then we get to the point now where 10th Planet, where the rubber guard system is like, well, you put him against Hoyler, and you can say whatever you like about the second match. The second match showed you what Eddie has, you know, and it's without a doubt, you know. And so where the next guy could be me, could be you, could be, you know, if we're all trying to make ourselves the best coaches that we can be, we may not have that guy yet. We may not have that stable, but those guys are going to bring up other guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's what I like too, and you're one of these guys, one of these innovators who finds something and sort of tries to dig in and find every concept and every way to use it, the way you've done with your Heisengard, the way you've done even just with like the flower roll. You went so deep on that. It's those types of minds that will really sow into the next generation, I think. And so the more of those we can get out there that are open to other people's ideas and expanding on them, I think that's what's going to really help blossom jiu-jitsu. It's not who's the next guy. It's more which teams are taking in the most.
Right. I think that's, you know, thank you for the compliment. I really do believe that it's going to come down to guys that aren't. So we all know the guys that don't get better, like the coaches that just refuse to look at anything else.
Yep.
And a lot of that is because they're scared to give up any ownership of who they are.
That's right. I mean, they made a name for themselves. A lot of legends. I don't have to drop any names, but everybody, I'm sure, is thinking of a few of them right now, where they are very high level. They've been around for decades and decades, been training their whole life, and they just feel like it's too late to change. You know, I've got my thing. This is my thing. People know me for my thing. Why would I change my thing? Yeah,
and it's only going to catch up to them, right? So we know, like I was talking about, like, and this is not talking trash or anything about, but like so somebody that I remember being spoken about every single time and if jiu-jitsu was being brought up, his name was brought up. And I have to do some research on him and see where he's at. But Mark Lehman was the guy who when I went to Vegas, I had to go to Cobra Kai.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was like, because it was like one of those, like, it would be like if you went to Albuquerque and then go to Greg Jackson's.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and then for whatever reason, there's a shift. Maybe that person's developing new athletes, or maybe there is taking like time to wash. You know, you got to go from the washing machine to the dry cleaner, and those guys aren't dry yet. You know, and there's so many different aspects. So when you look at Danaher and you look at Eddie Bravo, of course they're going to attract more people, right? But then you got guys like Eddie Cummings that, for whatever reason, he left, hasn't been competing, but maybe, you know, same thing with Keenan, is that he leaves Altos. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen with Keenan's gym in the next 10 years, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of, and I'm not going to say that either any of those situations you just named are in this case, but what can definitely happen with gyms that have figureheads that are solidified in their view of jiu-jitsu, this is what it is, this is how it's always worked for me, it's going to work for you. They're going to start shedding off their innovators as time goes on. So people like Keenan, people like Eddie, they're going to shed them because they're going a different path. And if that doesn't align with their affiliation, with their club, whoever, they're going to butt heads to a point that they're either going to get kicked out or they're going to leave. And it's kind of, I mean, it's a shame that it has to come down to that, because really all it is just arrogance. Right. You know, it's egos. Everybody loves to say there's no ego in jiu-jitsu. That's the most hilarious fallacy ever, because some of the biggest egos are at the top of the game, you know?
Right.
And like I was mentioning before, it's just the open-minded gyms that are going to succeed because they have more room to innovate.
Right. And if you look at it, you need an ego. Unless if you don't have an ego, then you're probably not on social media. I mean, just in general, why would you even put something out there to get a like or to get a view or to get anything out there? You would just be you would basically have like a museum of videos that you've done and they've never gotten out. You know, it's like, you think something's good and you're like, I think this is good. What do you guys think? And you either get a yay or nay, and then you go back to the drawing board again. And
yeah, I mean, I think that the ego thing, the no ego thing that spreads around, that's for white belts. Because 80% of people who train are white belts, it applies to most people, so they think it's universal. But really what it is just to try to keep these poor guys training, because they're getting shit kicked every time they come in the gym. And so they have to put their ego away, because if they don't, they leave. Yeah,
my favorite is you either win or you learn. And it's like, no, you also lost too.
Yeah.
On top of it, there's a reason there's a podium.
Yeah,
you didn't make it on that one. You didn't. It's true and it's not true. It's like you either win or you learn. It's like, but what did you learn? And you have to immediately ask yourself what you learned. And if you start coming up with excuses, you didn't learn much. And then if you can't figure out what you learned, then you need a better coach to point it out and go like, here, and here. These are all the things that you made a mistake on. And then you have to be the guy that can be like, okay, coach, I can do that.
That's right. They're cute little sayings that are somewhat applicable here and there, and they look good on a t-shirt, but people take them way too fucking seriously and need to be a lot more realistic about what is and isn't going on. And it's those people, again, that can take that criticism, that can apply it and not take it personally, are going to be the ones that grow faster.
And I think we're kind of hurt as a sport in general that we are not a high school or we're a money sport, but not really. To the point where you get basketball players that are coming from being yelled at as high school students, being yelled at as college students, and now being yelled at as NBA players. They're used to coach riding your ass. And then you have a thing like martial arts where it's now a sport, and it's more of a sport than it's ever been. And you don't want coach riding your ass because you pay him. And it's like, it's like, do you think that, I'm going to quote one of my students, like they say like, you can't expect Greg Popovich, who's the coach of the Spurs, one of the most winning coaches in the NBA, to dunk a basketball. He's just not going to be able to do it. You know, he's not only is he 60 years old, he probably never was able to dunk a basketball to start with. He's smart, and and when he dresses you down, he's dressing you down for a reason.
Yeah.
And in our sport, it's almost like, well, I got to be nice so that I keep my students, but I also got to be hard on them so that I make them better. And it's that kind of waffling where I wish, you know, like if I was in a communist country, I would do perfectly fine. You know, like they could just give me basically like, Alki, you can hold classes however you want to hold classes. They can drill as much as you want them to drill. You know, we're paying for their way, and that's why you have studs in Cuba and you know.
Yeah, I was going to say these ones coming from the Russian area in there with Kazakhstan, and I mean anything that ends in stan basically has fucking amazing wrestlers and grapplers. They're hard, they train hard, they get coached hard, and they take it. You know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will think that a coach is just chewing you out to chew you out, and I don't have to chew people out. Like, you know, like I can chew out anybody in the world and feel fine about it. I'm chewing you out with purpose. So if I'm chewing you out with purpose, it's because I want you to succeed, and I want you not to screw up again, and I want you to get better right away. And it's,
and a good coach is going to tell their student that too. They're not just going to be an asshole and leave it. They're going to be like, look, I'm telling you this because it's going to help. Like I could have let you or led you to the win in that last match if you had done this thing. Like that's important to the student. They wanted to win, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for MMA guys, it's different. I used to always tell an MMA guy, you can choose two things that I did wrong, right? Because MMA guys are notorious for blaming coaches. It's just a thing. It's like, but I would always tell my MMA guys, like, listen, you can choose two things that I did wrong, but you have to come back with one thing you did wrong. So I'll listen to your crap where you said, like, coach, I know I should have been working my boxing so much. I know I should have. No, I thought he was going to take me down, so I didn't work this. It's like, okay, I'll take those two. Now, what was wrong with yours? You know, like you tell me now you can tell me what you did wrong. You know, and as a lot of times as a coach, you sometimes keep the egos high. You know, like because this is an ego-driven sport. So if you look at a guy like Conor McGregor who believes in himself so much, but he also is very lucky in how it's worked out for him. Like everything has worked out for him, and every fight that he's had has been tailor-made except for the first Diaz fight, and likely whoever he fights, either Khabib or Tony Ferguson. And you go like, well, how can you say that? He's one of the best. It's like, he's one of the best, guaranteed, but he's beatable. He just rose to the occasion at certain moments, and the tide was turning in each way. Like Jose Aldo, fantastic win. Chad Mendes, a good in shape Chad Mendes may have been a problem. We don't, nobody knows. And then you move up, and he goes, well, he lost to Diaz. He made the corrections with kicking the front leg. Thank God. I mean, that's like one of the Diaz's hugest holds in their game is that lead leg. And then Eddie Alvarez, he can be knocked out in any first round. I mean, he gets flatlined any time in any first round. He gets dropped, usually in every fight. And then you go, well, okay, Donald Cerrone. Well, Donald Cerrone is a slow starter in that first round, and Conor McGregor is a very quick, fast starter in that. And so now it goes like, well, it's almost too good if Kamaru, like, what would you think? Kamaru Usman or George Masvidal? Best choice for Conor.
Oh God, I don't like either of those for Conor. I mean, for the fan excitement, it would be Masvidal, because he can do anything. He can do anything. Like I don't know where he's weak, and he's terrifying in all positions. He fucks you up. You know, it's kind of like Ferguson in that way. Like there's nowhere where you're safe. And he showed that with Diaz. Like he made Diaz look bad. Like usually people can edge Diaz or like get a good decision, but he made him look really bad. Yeah, which was crazy. Usman would be, I mean, it's basically style versus style at that point. It's going to be wrestler versus striker because they're both going to stick to their strengths. And I mean, people have run that game enough times to know that the wrestler usually comes out on top.
And you look at the Colby versus Usman fight, and Usman showed a lot of, I wouldn't say deficiencies, just that he can get hit, and he can get hit a lot. Yeah. And you go, okay, well, if I'm a matchmaker trying to make Conor McGregor a ton of money again and make myself a ton of money in the process,
Mm.
It would be Usman beats Masvidal, Connor fights Usman. If he loses, he goes down to 155 and tries to beat who I'm going to say is going to be. It's going to be Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
I think Tony Ferguson. I'm putting money on it. I don't. Did they just get rid of that card?
Yeah, so it was today the 30th.
Yeah.
Just to timestamp this, it got released this morning that Khabib is not allowed to leave Dagestan or Russia, wherever he is. The borders have been closed. So just by necessity, that fight has been canceled, and they're looking for a replacement. I guess right now they're looking at Dustin Gagey.
Okay,
Dustin Gagey.
the fight Tony.
Yeah, that's right. Which will be a fun fight, but it's not Khabib, right?
No, it's not. And I think Tony's the guy that has the right amount of sauce to beat him.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's unfortunate because if we don't get to ever see that, we'll never know how to beat Khabib, because I think he's the guy that beats Khabib because he's the good wrestler. He can stick around. You can maul him for 3 rounds, just cuts all over his face, and he's still going to be in your face. So while you're fatiguing, he's coming after you like a crazy man. And,
he's another one of those guys, kind of like Usman, that can get hit, and he usually gets rocked in the first round. Like, he's usually on wobbly legs and comes back and wins, like he did with Pettis.
Right? Insane. That fight alone was insane. And so if we don't ever get it, that'll suck. And I think that this era that we're under, where I don't think I ever expected to ever be quarantined.
Yeah.
How is Canada doing out there? Are you guys?
I mean, we're kind of following suit with the rest of North America right now. There's anything with a certain amount of people has been shut down. Anything non-essential has been shut down. So like my gym's been shut down for 2 weeks. There's nothing in sight right now for when that's going to be lifted, because the numbers just keep rising. So, I mean, all we can do is just sort of use these other countries that have had it before us as a guideline for what it's probably going to look like. So it's probably going to look like 2 months right now before things start tapering out. So things are just in standby in the meantime, which fucking sucks for all us business owners that have these bills coming out every month and that can't charge their customers, and the whole thing.
It's one of those things where you hope, and to be honest, what I'm putting out to my students is probably better than I've ever put out before, and a lot of people don't realize that, because
that's awesome.
What I'm doing on my live classes is I can't just go, okay, here's the move, then I show it 4 times, and then I watch them drill it, then maybe I add something to it, I go, okay guys, let's train, and then they all train. No, I'm actually doing an hour and a half to 2 hours of a seminar where I'm not doing anything else other than teaching, because I need to give each class. So I'm giving my kids class, my older class, and then my adult class. So I'm doing 3 classes each time. I'm doing either an hour or a half. For the kids, it's 2.5 hours. For the adults, it's 1 hour. I'm doing 2 hours a day, and I'm going in such deep detail about things, because there is no other thing to do. There is no go get water. There is no, okay, guys, find a partner and drill. It's become increasingly,
This is something that I was considering doing too, is these Zoom classes. The problem I have is that I can do kids classes, and I probably will start doing it because my daughter's trained. I can use one of them for the demo partner. I just don't have anybody that can come in for the adult class, So I'm thinking, what do I use? A grappling dummy? I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat lucky, like I'm married, so this will probably become where we used the gym for a while, and we only stayed within 2 people. There was like 1 person that I come in contact with. But even I don't know how bad it's getting, and I put on the news, and I don't know if the news has been this grim for the past 2 days, but after watching the news, it's just become more and more grim about, like, okay, Maryland's shutting down. Okay, Washington, D.C.'s shutting down. Okay, they're going to see they're going to be just like New York, and it's like, well, we're South Carolina, so we're not going to be as affected, but our resources are less. You got in Washington D.C., you have a huge amount of resources that help people. Us, not so much. And how do we continue? How do we move forward? How do we? How does something and my parents always told me this, and I really hate them for being right, is they're like, you should educate yourself. You should get, you should have a degree. You should have this. I'm like, oh, I do jiu-jitsu. It's fine. I'm going to end up doing this for the rest of my life. And I am still doing it for the rest of my life. But yeah, there was something that happened that made me not be able to do an entertainment thing.
Yeah, I never expected that this would be unsafe as far as the economy is concerned, because I came from a trade. I was a journeyman welder for 15 years, and that trade was always in flux. It's just it moves with the oil money, right? So as the market goes up, jobs go up. As the market goes down, everyone gets laid off, and you go in these cycles of ebbs and flows. And it was getting really, really frustrating to try to have a career when it was just the floor was dropping out every 2 to 3 years. So I figured, and I was right for the first couple of years until this hit, that if I got into a creative field, i.e. jiu-jitsu, this is not something that I'm selling a hard commodity. This is not something this is something I can transfer online. It's ideas. Then I'm going to be safe from automation. I'm going to be safe from market value. I'm going to be safe. And then all of a sudden we can't touch each other.
Right.
Like, who saw that coming?
And I think also not to be grim again, was that we didn't understand what our parents went through with the Russian bomb drills. Like where the Russians were always going to do something to us, and so we were scared to death. We were running drills like crazy, and we didn't get to experience that. But now we're experiencing how easily that could have been a nuclear bomb.
Right.
Like, let's say, not to throw Iran out of it, because I don't think Iran's listening to us, but let's say Iran throws a nuclear bomb at somebody that doesn't have the defenses for it. Now we are going to be in the same exact place that we are now, which is everybody's scared shitless. Right. Nobody's sure about the future. Nobody's sure about what to do. Nobody really knows who to point the finger at, and we're all just kind of being involved in that area that we hope that will sustain or be sustained.
I was having this conversation in my other podcasts last week with Jamie Kilstein, and I feel it was kind of pitched as a joke, but I mean it seriously, in that I think this is the first time, definitely in our generation, maybe in the last few, where the first world has had to really deal with a third world problem. Like, usually the third world is the one getting the plagues. We don't have to worry about that. We just don't let them into our borders. Like when Ebola hit in the 90s, that was an Africa problem. We stopped that at the borders. It never came into North America. If we found one case, we quarantined that motherfucker down and he didn't go anywhere.
Right.
Now we got something that we can't stop with borders. We can't stop with planes. We're trying to stay within our fucking house just to stop it from touching our family. This is something that in Africa, they've been dealing with forever because they have no choice. But now the first world is going to have to throw all of its resources into something they've never had to before, which is scary because we don't know what the fuck to do. We're just throwing money and ideas at each other and nothing's really sticking yet. But I guess the positive note, like, to try to take away from some of the grimness, because you're right, it is everywhere. It's in the air right now, and you got to kind of take a breath from that every now and again, or you're just going to go insane. We've got more, universally, we have more doctors working on this problem worldwide than we have any problem maybe in the last 100 years.
Yeah, that's very true.
100,000 plus specialists, experts in their field that are all trying to find the best quality explanation and solution for this. And I bet they will. And it might be something that they've never found before, which is great, because then that can not only prevent us from the recurrence of this, which is probably going to happen either later this year or next year, but it can be transferred downstream to the third world. Now maybe the whole human race gets a solution, because when it was down the third world, we didn't give a fuck. Just keep it away from us, but now it's affecting us. We got to use our resources, our smarts, our money to try to fix this for our own good, which might just, by proxy, help the human race, which is great,
Yeah. I mean, think about how old are you, Drew?
I'm 37.
Okay. We're the same age. How much of a joke Ebola was to us. Oh, they got the Ebola, like immediately, like that was like the joke was like, he's got Ebola. Yeah. That you could make that joke.
For sure.
You can't make that joke about coronavirus.
Well, you see, that's how it always started. It's funny because if you have friends internationally, well, this has been going down because it's been making major news since January, and I guess it was a thing back in like November in China, but it really hit a head around January. If you knew people in China, you would see the progression that we're seeing now, and if you knew people in South Korea, you'd see the progression. If you knew people in Italy, and I got people in most of these countries that I know through jiu-jitsu that I get in their message box every now and again and be like, so tell me about how it happened there. Tell me about how it's going now. Tell me about where you think it's going to go. And it's funny because it's kind of like looking into the future. It's
Right.
something that we don't usually get a chance to do because it is really following exactly the same trend, no matter what the culture is, no matter what the country is. And I had a friend from Italy who is saying, when it started, everybody thought it was a joke. It was hilarious. We all had memes about it. Everybody was passing the memes about coronavirus, and it was so
Right.
funny. Then the week after that, we were all starting to get quarantined. We're like, okay, we're just going to have these secret training sessions. We're just not going to tell anybody about them. It's going to be okay. We won't put it on social media. It'll be fine. And then a week after that is when people start dying. And they're like,
Right.
this is much worse than people think it is. This is not as much of a joke as they think it is. And we're trying to learn from their mistakes preemptively is the idea.
Right.
And I don't know how well it's going, to be perfectly honest. You see Gordon Ryan out there, and you see people that are spreading these bad ideas about how it's not a big deal. And it's like, this is why it's going to be worse.
Yeah, I don't think there's any stopping it in America because we're so hard-headed, and on top of that, there's so many lives depend on our contact with other people. It's like businesses we're as Americans, we do not trust the government.
Mm-hmm.
So when the banks went under and everybody got screwed on their houses, and they took away people's hard-earned money who put their life savings into a house, and then they just flipped it and took it and gave it to the banks. It's like nobody trusts. Now it's like, oh yeah, we're going to take care of you. And we can't trust the government because we think, well, there goes my business, there goes my livelihood, there goes my house, there goes everything I've worked for.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, I don't know if Canada has the same kind of, like you guys have a capitalism, but you guys are different because you have healthcare, you have different ways of dealing with things than like the U.S., which is like a capitalism monster. And it's like if you don't make a bunch of money, then you're food.
Yeah, I have a friend, I'm sorry, in South Korea who was like right in ground zero when it started hitting their area. He was like right in the city where it started going crazy. So he got locked down right away. And he said one of the surprising benefits for it happening in South Korea was that, and it usually gets used as a pejorative towards their people, in that they're very homogenous. And by that I mean like it's kind of like a hive mind, and the Asian countries in general kind of get slammed for this, and they're like, oh, you just you'll do whatever your dictator tells you to, blah blah blah. It worked perfectly for them in this situation because everybody agreed, everybody obeyed, everybody did what they were supposed to do, and it actually dropped the curve significantly faster than it might have otherwise. And he, being an American, his name's Tom, working over there, he was telling me, like, this is why I'm most worried for the U.S., because that's not going to happen.
It's not. There's a huge distrust, and people are scared. Not only are they scared of this virus, I think as a business owner, I'm less scared of this virus affecting me than I am the virus affecting my livelihood for generations to come.
For sure. But the problem is that they're conjoined, right? As the virus gets worse, the business gets worse because people have to hide for longer. It's just back and forth swirling vortex of shit that we kind of have to fix the one, which may not affect us personally, so that it doesn't hurt the thing that's going to affect us personally.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, with our current situation, everybody's going to want to point the finger at somebody else, and we're never going to have an answer. We're never going to have the who handled it right or who didn't handle it right. It will just go away at some point, and then it will come back, and everybody will freak out because it's bound to come back, and it's bound to, even if it's a small case where it's like 4 people get it, we're all going to freak out again because 4 people get it, and
Well, this is
So,
something I was talking with my wife this morning about. I don't want to make this whole podcast
oh,
about
no.
Corona, but we'll kind of diverge after this if you want.
Yes.
But one interesting thing to try to look forward is, like we were saying, it's likely going to come back in the fall or the winter. Good part to that, pro, is that a lot more people will have immunities to it. We'll be closer to antiviral if we don't have it by then, closer to a vaccine if we don't have it a few months after that.
Right.
All that is good, but cons, we're probably going to hit the exact same situation we're in right now, where people are going to say, do we shut shit down?
Right.
I feel like it's much less likely that people will sit and take this a second time around. I already see people in comments on the memes that I put out there that are Corona related being
Right.
like, I'm so fucking tired of this, I just want my job back. And I get it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine being able to play this card twice, which is going to put the government and our cultures kind of in this strange situation where we're going to be like, what's our next best option?
Right. Instead of shutting down the town.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they're going to do that again.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think of. Yeah, you kind of blew my brain right there. It's like yeah, we're not going to do this again. Nobody's thinking that in any way that we would ever go through this again. We're going to fix it and fix it right.
Yeah, they're talking about the stock market dropping more than it ever has, more than the Great Depression. You think that we're going to sit through that twice in 1 year?
Right.
Especially there's Donald Trump in charge. He's an economist, or I shouldn't say an economist, but he's an econ person.
Yeah.
He cares about the money, right?
Right. And likely so does everybody else, that if they're taken care of,
for sure,
that it'll go the same way, or there'll just be a giant smoke screen. Look over here. This is who did it. And then with the way we go about things is that one, people are going to believe no matter what that it's not their fault, or they're going to believe it's no matter what it's somebody else. They'll point at somebody else. So
yeah, the finger pointing never is going to stop, and there's really no way to know who's right and who's wrong, but really it doesn't matter. Like, we got to focus on the problem. So this is what I'm curious about, is with all of the brightest minds in the human race on planet Earth right now, focusing on the same problem, can we find a better plan B by the second round? This is it, to put it into fight terms. We're coming into the second round. What's our adjustments?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's really well thought out, because 100% this will happen again, and I don't want to shut my gym again. I don't want to do that again. And it's like, it took me 5 years to get to where I am today, and then for me to say, like, hey, shut everything down, go inside, don't talk to anybody, don't let anybody come in. Okay, people are canceling their memberships. Okay, it's just what it's insanity, and it's nobody's fault.
Let's swing around to how this plays towards jiu-jitsu, and maybe we'll eventually get into just pure jiu-jitsu again, because that was the fun part of the conversation. I know everybody gets hit over the head with this, but it is kind of what most matters right now, so I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing about people coming back, so say all the bans get lifted, we're past this curve, everybody feels like it's safe to train again. We're going to get people coming back so hungry who already train, but I feel like we're going to have a drop off in new people wanting to start. Do you feel that?
No, I'm actually going to think that people are going to take the chance that this may not be around again. And that more like, let's say everybody gets 100% healthy, right? 100, like, everybody's back up and running. There's very little issues. Everybody's, for the most part, is healthy. I mean, I think we're going to get a lot of new students, because maybe it's just what's going on in my inbox, but I'm just seeing more hunger for jiu-jitsu, which means that people are going to listen to their friends a little bit more. Like, it's like somebody who didn't do anything, they're going to join kickball. So like these kickball leagues are going to have a resurgence. Everybody's going to have, anybody that has a thing where people come together and meet and enjoy time with one another, I think it's going to have a giant kick back up. You
Well,
know?
maybe that's the move for the jiu-jitsu gyms then, is for the month that they come back, that's the time to do a bring a buddy program where you bring these people in because their parents are looking to find an activity for them. They're looking to get out of the house to do something, and maybe they just need that invitation.
Yeah, and I think that everybody's going to be looking for something to do. You know,
Mhm.
like I don't think everybody's going to stay at home anymore. I think everybody's going to immediately like flood the malls, flood.
That's a good point, man. Because you see it every year from Christmas to New Year's, right? You got all the
Mhm.
people getting gluttonous over their turkey and stuffing over the Christmas, and then they get all self down on themselves because they've gained weight and they feel like a fat
Mhm.
sack of shit. So they get into the gym on New Year's. So I guess this could be like a second New Year's where it's like you've been stuck at home binging, watching Netflix, eating pizza. You know,
Right.
you want to get out and do something. Come do this.
Yeah, that I think, you know, and it's up to the academies to take initiative, you know, to really kind of tell everybody else, like, hey, you got to tell people what you do. Like they
Yeah.
may, you know, like exactly bring a buddy, and a lot of people don't want to, you know, either they don't want to share their special thing with somebody that might annoy them, or, you know, personally, like it's kind of always been funny where it's like, I do, this is my thing. I don't want anybody else to know what my thing is. It's like,
Yeah.
this is, you know, if I bring somebody that I know my real life into it, that crosses my realities, you know, like,
Dude, I know exactly what you mean. When I was welding, everybody kind of knew, like they said, like Drew's a fighter. That's all they knew how to say, right? Is he was a fighter, he does martial arts or whatever. It's when I was doing a tournament, how'd the fight go? You know,
yeah.
um, but every now and again, somebody would start getting like you could see they're sort of interested and eager. I'm like, no, I do not want you there.
You're right. Uh, you ever watch Seinfeld?
Yeah.
When he starts talking about, I can't remember the exact episode, but he starts talking about his future wife hanging out with the crew. And he's like, no, my two realities, they can't. It's like, you don't understand. They cannot meet each other.
That's right. Yeah, they'll
My,
both implode.
yeah, it's like this reality of me jiu-jitsu and this me with my friends, like they can't mix. You can't put those two together. That's gross. I
Yeah.
can't have my regular friends know my jiu-jitsu friends.
That's so funny. I forgot all about that because it's been a couple years since I've been in the trades, but I was exactly like that. When people wanted to bring up the conversation, usually the trope is that the jiu-jitsu guy can't stop talking about jiu-jitsu, but sometimes it's the person who doesn't do jiu-jitsu that wants to talk about it, and I shut the conversation down because I
Yeah.
didn't want them to come train.
Yeah, it's I can't have, you can't go to another gym. Like
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think a lot of people will be ticked off because they will mention it to their friends, and their friends will come and they'll love it, and then maybe their friend gets better than them, and it ruins them.
That's hilarious.
It would ruin me if one of my friends from like just from childhood just started doing jiu-jitsu and just was an ace at it and just like a Gordon Ryan level. I would be
I know.
so annoyed.
That's probably exactly what Gary Tonin experienced with Gordon Ryan coming up. You know, did you ever watch? Because I watched Gordon coming up because I followed Gary pretty closely while Gordon was coming up as a teenager. Well, he was a purple belt. I was watching. There's this famous Facebook Live that Gary did where they were around a bonfire and they were bullshitting and drinking beers, and he's like, I wanted to put this on Facebook Live, guys, we're all out here at the bonfire, and he pulls out a brown belt and he said, Gordon Ryan, I just want you to know, and he throws it in the fire, says, you're never getting your brown belt. Because I mean, Gary knew it, and he saw it early on, and he even, I mean, he jokes about it all the time coming up, but he would break character every now and again and be like, guys, you don't understand, this guy is going to be so much better than me.
Man, and now you have just a monster in Gordon Ryan, where it's like maybe this time off will be weird, like maybe there's some superstar being built somewhere in some factory that, because you just don't, like, you don't know who's next, right? Just like you didn't see Craig Jones coming. Nobody saw Craig Jones coming.
Nobody.
And maybe Craig Jones with a little bit more guidance of like, so he loses to Gordon Ryan right now, but maybe because that Gordon Ryan's had the training partners and has had the that outlet that he's gotten better, but maybe Craig Jones is getting that much better that quicker.
Yeah,
you just don't know.
I feel like they would be like really good rivals if they didn't join up, because Craig is training with Danaher now and has been since previous to the last ADCC training camp. But I was talking to Craig on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that if it weren't for there being a hole in that weight class leading into ADCC and Danaher's, that he probably wouldn't have been able to train there. He's like, it's just fortuitously, my weight category was kind of open, so they opened their doors to me. And he's like, I always wanted to train there. I mean, Gordon beat me 3 times leading into that. My choice was either get beaten a 4th or go train with the guy. So, but you never know. Like, he could be still on the rise. Maybe Gordon is starting to plateau. Who knows? It's hard to see these things in the moment, right?
Yeah, it's almost like just like how we think about Tony and Tony winning the Ultimate Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Who would see Tony as the biggest threat to the title? Nobody. I mean, no, you could never say like this guy's going to be who everybody's talking about at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get like, so I come from, Top Team where I don't really have too much of a connection to the headquarters like I used to. But there was a point where like I watched guys get belts and turn on each other, like just insanely. Like I don't know how real the Masvidal Colby Covington thing is. I don't know how real it goes, because a lot of that is like BS wrestling stuff.
Yeah, for sure. With Colby, you never know. Yeah,
and I know the guys who pretty much like they're huge wrestling fans over there with the management and stuff. So they love, their owner, Dan bought a belt, like a real WWF belt that The Rock had,
wow.
And so they knew how they were going to manufacture Colby, and maybe they've manufactured this tiff, but Robbie Lawler left because Tyrone Woodley won, and Tyrone Woodley wasn't even in our gym anymore, really. Like to say that he was with Top Team would be to say that, like, that you're with Top Team because you know me. Like, realistically, Tyrone was around Laboria more than anything else. He did his training with us, and Kami. Kami was one of his best friends, who's now with not the Black Stallions, but Henry Hoop's school.
Okay.
And as soon as Lawler lost, he fell out of like good graces with the management, and then Tyron Woodley was being touted as a Top Team guy, and it's like Woodley was training with Dean Thomas and Rufus. That's basically it. He's a Rufus guy. Like if any of those guys deserve credit, it's Rufus Sport for what they did with Woodley, and then so now you have like, okay, well if Covington would have won that match, who knows what would happen where George would go. It happens like this, and where I think jiu-jitsu is just slightly different in the fact that we get along with each other, but it's like when your guys compete, do they go against one another?
Oh, within the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do gentlemen's agreements, if that's what you mean, in a match. I just tell them, I'm not going to coach either of you. Good luck to you both. Remember, if so-and-so beats you, then you can always get them back in the gym. It's just, I'm proud of you both for getting here. Go have fun. Right.
And I think that's important. But so people like me and you, I do the same thing. Is that, are we cultivating something to where if jiu-jitsu gets to the level of the stakes of Olympians, or the stakes of something that's very like honor, like, man, number one is what you need. Like, let's say ADCC, like they I know that they didn't put Gary in. I think they took Gary out of the ADCC absolute because they chose Gordon. Maybe that was, or Nicky Rod. I can't remember what exactly happened.
No, Gary was in the absolute. He got choked by Gordon.
Okay, then maybe they pulled Nicky Rod from the I remember that happening backstage and going like, well, why aren't you doing the absolute? He's like, oh, they're going with Gordon. And had that been a different gym, had that Nicky Rod still has a long way to go, right? I mean, like, as far as jiu-jitsu goes, as far as competing, he's a killer. He's like the Yoel Romero of jiu-jitsu, where he's not great at anything, but he's great at competing and beating guys who are good.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath the rule set that he has to, under the rule sets. And I know that they kept Nicky Rod out because Gordon was going in. And it's kind of like that whole, like, well, maybe Nicky Rod, like, had Danaher been like this, you know, like, let's say they all paid their dues. Who's going to say Nicky Rod and Gordon Ryan aren't going to go against one another? I mean, that's the tip top of the food chain. And is Nicky Rod going to take that again? I know a lot of guys that give up their spot to like Alliance has a lot of guys in the IBJJF.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of guys that are told, hey, you're losing this one.
Mm-hmm.
And they take it. And I just think, I'm like, man, that guy's been champion 5 times in a row. When is he going to let you take it? You know, it's
a dirty secret in the sport, man. And it really I understand the mentality behind it, but it burns bridges with a really important athlete. You're going to choose one over the other, and if they're not cool with it, you've just burned that bridge. I knew a friend who was in that situation. He was, I believe he was Alliance, but I think specifically he was under Cobrinha. Mm-hmm. Not directly, but he was a satellite gym up in BC. And so anyways, he went down to Pans and ended up going against Cobrinha's son. And I asked him, because he knew that this match was going to happen. I forget if he was messaging me after his first match or if it was his first match and he knew it was coming. Either way, he knew it was coming. I was like, what happens if Cobrinha walks up to you and tells you to just give him the win? He's like, well, patches are easy to rip off. He's like, I'll just rip my patch off and we're done. Like I sacrificed a lot to get here and I'm going to give it my all.
Did that happen?
No, he didn't have to tear his patches off. They let him fight, and he ended up losing by advantage. But it was like he gave it, you know. And what you're saying is there's some gyms will be like, no, not acceptable. You're gonna go take this loss to Homolo and you know, suck it up. I
have had guys call me the time it's happening and ask my opinion.
Wow.
While it's going on, and they're like, and I can't bring up any names because that's their thing. But it's like I always tell them, I'm like, man, how many times has that guy won? How many times has that guy been to the finals? Like I understand, like if Keenan was on my gym and I was a first time guy and Keenan had a chance to go, maybe Keenan deserves it more than I do, you know, like because I'm still young, but we all deserve it. And at the same time, it goes, the best guy's going to win regardless.
Yeah,
and that's the way it should be.
That's what's important.
And I think that the old school guys, at least the guys who are doing who are the ones telling guys like, hey, you got to let, let's just Homolo, we'll just use Homolo as an example already. Mm-hmm. You have to let Homolo win. It's like, Homolo's already won. I had never won. I've never gone to the finals. So you're saying that I'm going to take third and he could either get second or first against a guy that maybe if I beat Homolo, I get the second place medal or I get the first. And
well, it changes your career, and it doesn't change his. It just adds to his legacy, you know. And this is what's kind of gross. There's something that Robert Drysdale and I were talking about on a podcast last week, where I was asking him. I put him on the spot because he's been building up this documentary about the history of jiu-jitsu, which spoiler alert is full of a bunch of trigger warnings. Like it's going to be if he's done his work and he's done his homework. This is going to be bigger than Tiger King. Yeah,
it's going to be
in the jiu-jitsu community. Yeah,
it's going to be grosser than Tiger King. If it's going to get like because you watch Tiger King, yeah. All right, the things that I know, just on my side of things, is insane, and I can only imagine what Drysdale has. You know,
he's a really intelligent guy who has a knack for history. So he's done his research. Everything that he's put into there is backed up to the nines. So it's going to be awesome. One thing that he was talking about, though, when I asked him, I kind of put him on the spot, and I said, there's this debate historically about who's the greatest Gracie. Some people say it's Hickson, other people say it's Holes, and there's always this debate back and forth about historically who is the greatest, who is the GOAT. And he said he had just a perfect answer. He basically said, there's a moment in time for every athlete where they're unstoppable, where they're untouchable. Hickson did a fantastic job of peaking and then locking that in place. He said it's an impossible argument to win against Hickson because he protected his prime so perfectly that you can't find a fault in his competition while he was competing, and then he stopped. He's like, realistically, the people who have perennially put it on the line in the Gracie family, who have the most to show for it, are Hodger, our Kira, our who's the guy that Eddie we were just talking about fought? Different Eddie Bravo, Hoyler. Yeah. He said those are the three. He said as far as the Gracie family is concerned, the name, heritage, real competition, you got to say it's Hodger, Kira, and Hoyler. And I was like, that's really interesting. And he even expressed it on himself. He's like, look, I'm not the same person I was when I choked out Marcelo to win the absolute.
Right.
I'm not the same guy. So if you were to say, I'm the greatest because of that moment, I'm not that guy anymore.
Right.
But, if I decided that was going to be my legacy, then the argument could be made for decades, right?
If he would have stopped, if he would have stopped, then there are no more losses.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And to an extent, we're sad when we see our heroes die, but we're also angry when our heroes don't step up to the plate.
For sure. And this is what you're starting to see that you're getting angry at, is the manufacturing of these legacies of these people that have won it multiple times. Maybe they have a teammate who's peaking, that they're going to, they're going to block his chances without giving him that go that he got, and that's gross to see.
Yeah. And think about this. Had Levi Jones not been on Lepre, if he was on Lepre's team, we may never know who that kid is. He may have never made it to another finals, because Lepre is the guy who's always going to be first place in Alliance in his weight class. And it goes, man, if you take some battles, some of the most memorable jiu-jitsu battles that have gone back and forth, Jacare and Hodger, or it's take that and put them on the same team, and now they have to follow that rule suit, and it's like everything changes, everything, And
it's part of how you win in those big tournaments. Part of it is skill, and part of it is politics. And it's shitty to understand, but it really is how it works.
And had you been on one side compared to the other side, you would have bowed out at second place.
Yeah.
You would have closed out at second, but no, you got to close out at third. And nobody, some of the guys who are most well known, who are always, I always feel bad for I don't feel bad, but I always feel it for the guys that were around during somebody's era, the era of this guy of Low, or the era, and they just couldn't break that, the era of Buchecha. Let's just say that one. That's an easy one to say. The era of Buchecha, and then you got right underneath him Rodolfo, right? They kind of had their battles, but then you got James Popolo, right, who is always there, but under somebody else's era, of the era of Buchecha. And right when Buchecha takes off is Rodolfo. Right when Rodolfo takes off, it's back to Buchecha. And it's like you can't crack that egg, because those guys are so damn good that you should have won a world championship by now. And he's been third place. I don't know if I went to his records or something. He's been third place a lot, against the best guys in the world. And it's only because those two guys exist.
Yeah, that's right. And his name won't carry the same weight that it should for how good his skill is, which is a shame.
Exactly. Yeah. And what can you do? You can't do anything, because that was the same thing with people that were in the Georges St. Pierre era. The same. It's like, oh, you didn't get a title? No, I didn't get a title. No, because one of your losses was Georges St. Pierre. Think about all the guys. think about the guys that lost. So I have a buddy of mine, Marcus Brimage, who got kicked out of the UFC after he lost to Conor McGregor.
Okay.
Because that was Conor McGregor's debut.
Oh,
His debut was against, and he knocked out Marcus, and then the UFC let him go. And now Conor's knocking out every human imaginable. It's like, hey, maybe this guy still belonged. Maybe you should.
Yeah. Dude, I got a friend here that does the same thing. He was the first fight for Weidman in the UFC, and he got made an example of and let go. I'm like, man, he's one of the best guys we got in the province. Like, he could kick most people's ass in this division. Weidman went literally right to the top, beating Silva. It's like, damn.
Yeah,
man.
Yes, that's what it is. It was unlucky to get Weidman before Weidman was Weidman.
Yes,
losing to Weidman now, it's acceptable. He may be somewhat of a journeyman now, like who's protecting the top three. Right. But realistically, at that time, he was the best in the world.
Unarguably, he beat Silva twice. Nobody had touched him before that. He broke the legend,
Right.
Yeah.
And then did Silva stick around too long?
Oh, for sure.
And
I think so.
When you taint your – so we were just talking about like guys that go out on the win, and then guys that had their last chance like Bisping that make it happen, and then these guys get stuck in these like, well, the narrative has to be me winning in the end. The story has to be. Yeah. And
that really worried me when George St. Pierre came back to fight Bisping, because I was like, why? Why are you coming back? You ended your career, the UFC champion at 170. You had a fucking hell of a run. Right. You were the GOAT for your division. Some people say you're in the pound for pound best ever. You're coming back for what? For another title against a guy that doesn't matter to your legacy in a different weight class? I was so annoyed to see him do that, especially at a higher weight class. I'm like, there's a higher chance you're going to get brain damage from this fight against a really talented, powerful striker.
Right.
Who, I mean, look, he put a hell of a fight on George before George won that fight. It was back and forth with that cut in the first round. And then, I mean, he did, thankfully for his legacy, he did what he wanted to do. He made his point and basically dropped the UFC belt in the garbage on the way out of the octagon. Right. Because that's all he wanted to do, was just go in there and prove a point. But now people are still wanting him to come back to fight Khabib, to fight Conor. I'm like, at what point is it not good enough? He's got the storybook ending twice. Why do you got to keep dragging him back in?
And I think maybe he came back because of what happened with the Johnny Hendricks fight, where Dana White just really talks shit about him to the extent that, it's like, oh, he should, like, Johnny Hendricks actually won that fight. He's now ducking everybody because he's scared, or because USADA came back in. And then, it was like the whole, like, everybody was talking trash about his legacy because he left on that split decision. Yeah. He left when USADA was finally taking over and like really started to drug test guys. Like, because I think Johnny Hendricks got busted right away, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Or if he did get busted, he deflated into not the same guy.
No.
Right. And then so he came back and he beat Bisping. Yeah, he should stop now.
For sure. And to your point, how many people come back to make that exact same point and lose? So many people, most people.
Yeah, because the game changes a little bit. Mm-hmm. And like Floyd Mayweather was very good at choosing the fight with Conor McGregor. It was good for both of their careers because it doesn't tarnish his career at all. There's almost no way that Conor beats him. But if Conor knocks out two more guys, do we watch him fight Mayweather again? Probably. I mean, I'll watch. I won't buy it, but I'll watch it. Oh my goodness. Agree, yeah. Listen, this is exactly what I wanted to kind of get out of this first podcast with you, is get to know who you are, get to know a little bit more about you, and get some actual questions and kind of get inside the mind of Because Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, man, I really appreciate you bringing me on here. Hopefully, you feel like you got everything you wanted out of me. I feel like we went in every direction, but I think we covered a lot of good shit.
Yeah, listen, that's the way my brain works. My brain works like it's like buckshot. It's gonna hit everything, and it's gonna do damage to some things. And it's gonna hurt. We're gonna eat some things, but it's just a buckshot. That's pretty much the way my brain works. And thank God you're able to hang with me, because otherwise I'm gonna roll her off into the multiverse.
Yeah, God bless ADD.
Yeah. So I would love to do another one with you soon, but we'll let this one cook. And I think there's a lot to take away, at least from just our interaction together, which is something that needed to happen. We've always been talking about an Illuminati meeting, and I think more so we need it after this crap is over. We've got to get together, because who knows next time? Let's all get together. Let's train. Let's do a seminar. Let's do a meeting of the minds, and let's really cook.
Yeah, right on, man. You mind if I plug my stuff before I go?
No, plug all of your stuff.
Cool, man. So check me out on Because Jitsu on Instagram, on Facebook, and check out my other podcast, Rear Naked Radio, with my co-host Jamie Kilstein. We got a guest every week. We drop one every Monday on all of your platforms, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. And if you're looking for my series, you want to see my instructionals, I got some free stuff on YouTube you can check out. I got a bunch of shit on there. But specifically, I've got one on reverse Kimura, which is a grip that I've been working on for the last year, and put a closed guard series out for that you can find online. And once this pandemic falls through and we can get back to the mats, there's going to be a half guard one coming soon.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited, because I haven't, like when you just started putting out instructionals, like just didn't know, and now I know. Listen, guys, legitimately, I'm excited to watch the reverse Kimura series. I'm legitimately excited to see everything you put out, Drew. I mean, I
appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, this is Dream Podcast. Jiu-Jitsu rules everything around me. This is with Drew, Weatherhead, and we are gone. Thank you, guys.
Dream, Jiu-Jitsu rules everything around me podcast.